in lieu of me reading bios, I thought maybe y'all could just introduce yourselves to the audience. Just, a general, like, how you came to permaculture and what you're up to involved in permaculture. And then we'll dive into this digital permaculture idea. But Mike, maybe you wouldn't mind starting with, it doesn't have to be the long story, but just quickly, kind of how did you stumble upon permaculture, and then what's kind of new and exciting for you right now?
So we kind of stumbled into permaculture really through the portal of Ben Falk, who in Vermont.
Also Vermont, right?
He's also Vermont. Yeah, he's south of us, but so is everybody. But we got through we read his book, and we actually paid him to come here when we first got the land. So we came from Philadelphia. We wanted to grow our own food, and that was all impossible in the suburbs. We did research, and we both loved Vermont. Came here, found land, very nice land, and we've just been building and experimenting ever since. And now, to segue into the final part, we've kind of gotten out of that permaculture experiment stage where you want to do it all, but you really can't do it all. And now we're just sort of circling our wagons and figuring out what is our business model, and how can we actually make money with our knowledge and our farm. So that's the phase we're in now, transitioning.
Okay, that's an exciting phase. I'm sure you've got many ideas, and now it's just figuring out which ones you're gonna like, because like everything, you could, especially with permaculture, you can have multiple income streams, but if you have too many, then it's almost like you don't have any. But if you have too few, then maybe you're too vulnerable. So you just got to hone in on your 3 or 4 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think of the waiter with the tray analogy. Like, you can handle so many drinks, and you're gonna make it to the table. You add that extra 1 or 2, and you lose it all. So
that's right. So what kind of acreage? I may have missed it, but how much acreage do you have?
We have 10 and a half acres.
Okay.
I'd say 7.5 of that is sugar bush, which is maple, acers, saccharum, and about an acre around the house. And then maybe 2 acres in the field, which is now dedicated to an orchard and pick your own blueberry and honey berries.
Okay, sweet. That's great.
So,
and Cormac, I know we've met once before, or a couple times, I suppose, but you interviewed me and Sean of Pina, which was awesome, on your awesome Vine podcast that people should check out if they're not familiar with. But tell me, I don't know that I got your, like, how'd you come to permaculture? And then aside from the podcast, what else is kind of percolating for you and exciting for you currently?
Well, I came to permaculture through gardening, got my own place, and then being restless, I just can't sit still. So I started doing stuff around the garden. Then that led to permaculture gardening, going down the YouTube rabbit hole. And then that led to starting a PDC with Jeff Lawton in 2019. Took me 2 years to complete that. Sort of during COVID, work was a bit challenging. So it took me 2 years. Finished that, built myself a website, called myself a permaculture designer. I started getting jobs. And
hey, it's official.
And it was official. Then got myself a job then designing. Then was interested in because I work part-time as an engineer, and I went part-time due to the youngest child was born, so it was made of 3 children. So something had to give. So I went part-time. Then it was like, right, how do I do this full-time in order to sort of sustain myself, to give me that flexibility? And then that's how the sort of journey down the podcast started. How do I build a career out of this? And just learned in public, started asking people, would they come on and tell me how they're doing it so that I could copy it? Or at least sort of learn and share with other people then. And just I'm still working all that out. What's percolating the minute for me is I'm on 1/10 of an acre. So not a lot of space, but I have a front garden food forest, which this year I'm going to really pack out. So I've done a lot of things over the years separate. So I've had like, say, chickens and then sort of all these sporadic things. This year I'm just trying to bring it all together. Now that I'm a bit more knowledgeable, and just basically try and build one big system and try and document it a bit more. So cool. That's what I'm working on at the minute. Front yard food forest, and then a backyard. Backyard's looking nice and sort of manicured. I want to keep it that way now. It got a bit of a mess. So the reverse of a permaculture mullet, what would you call that?
It was I don't know. Oh,
Bushy at the
business in
front,
back, I guess.
neat at the back. I don't know what
A
that is.
What was it, Mike?
A mullen.
Oh, a mullen. Man. There you go. Yeah, well, that's the nice thing about a 1/10 of an acre, right? Is that it's like you can pack it out and get your system pretty well dialed in. And if like if you're on 10 acres like Mike, that's a lot of work and a lot of like extra little spaces that you can plug all sorts of things. But with a 1/10 of an acre, it's like, hey, I can get my system pretty well built and always swap things as I evolve and as the garden evolves. But I kind of like the constraints of the smaller urban gardens in for that particular reason. So that's cool. I look forward to seeing you document that, or maybe you already have been.
No, I haven't started yet.
It's
basically it's one of the main things I learned from doing the podcast and speaking to people was you don't have to have that big farm. I was like, right, I'm happy where I am, so just work on with what I have,
right,
and make the most of that. And I don't need the big acreage because I wouldn't have time to take care of it.
Yeah, totally. No, that's great. I was going to actually ask you what you learned from the podcast so far. I mean, the danger, of course, is that you're getting too many ideas and then you're like, oh, I should do that. Oh, I should do that. But of course, the benefit is you can get a lot of distilled like nuggets and be like, ooh, I'm going to steal that because that's really that's a valuable piece of advice, So what kind of have been your biggest lessons or learnings that you've taken from the podcast so far?
It's just basically same as design. Everybody's different and everybody has their own niche to fill. And if you follow your sort of personality and follow what you like, do that rather than you can't never copy someone. Like you can't be Jeff Lawton, you can't be Justin Rhodes, you can't be all these people. You have to be yourself and do what suits your situation. So approach it from a sort of permaculture design standpoint and say, right, what is appropriate for me in my situation? Do I have a family? Do I have 60 hours a week to spend? Do I have 10 hours a week? Just and then that applies for both garden and career. And then the thing is multiple income streams. You can't just do one thing. You can't just say, right, I'm a designer and just design, because you'll get I know I was getting it last year when I had a lot of designs on, like design fatigue. I don't know if Mike suffered from that, but you just one design back to back, and you start losing a wee bit of enthusiasm for it. So what I've got as well, everybody I've interviewed has multiple streams of income and multiple things they're doing to keep their life balanced and interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, your chickens, don't put all your chickens in one basket, which is true, right? So multiple income streams. Right now my wife is in another room behind me making the money. So that's one income stream. We're working on actually creating those income streams. I keep hearing that over and over, and it's funny. And I just started to interject here, but diversity. Permaculture, if not one of the general principles, maybe not the 12 principles, but diversity in almost anything. The more you increase your network, the more you have your footprint is widened, and the less chances you have to fail. Your resilience increases. So income streams, or even I would argue energy streams, which is another whole conversation, but multiple income streams that's what I'm focusing on now. And one other thought, when you were saying, Cormac, it works on permaculture is different on a 1/10 of an acre versus 10 acres. But it works in both places. It's just going to be different the way you configure it. But I would say a 1/10 of an acre that's about as small as you could get to have a like a functioning garden.
Yeah, unless you're doing the balcony apartment dweller. I'm thinking of a Bill Mollison video where he's like just on a little tiny balcony and they're like, let's do a mini permaculture thing here. Of course, you're not going to derive much income stream off of that, nor protein or sustenance, but you're going to get something, and you're going to be, boosting your local ecosystem by doing that nonetheless.
And building your experience. And
I think Sepp Holzer has a really good, I don't know if you guys have his books. I think it's in Sepp Holzer's Permaculture that he has a really good drawing of like an apartment, like ecosystem that you could have just on like a patio size or even less. So, just to make people feel like you can do it anywhere. But I agree with you, like an 1/8 of an acre, a 1/10 of an acre, that's a great sort of place to start. And many of us are in urban environments, myself included. I'm right in the middle of my little city here. We have 2 plots of land. Luckily, just sort of happened that way. So that's all the better for me. But if I only had one little square postage stamp, like the 1/10 of an acre that you have, Cormac, I might just do that like to the nines, like do it as best as I can. But then like just see if I can start talking to my neighbors, because there's so many grass square lots that are just sitting here and people just mow them, and that's literally all that happens to them. So I might do the Curtis Stone thing and start to reach out and say like, hey, I wonder if I can grow blueberries here or haskap or something like that, and see if I can grow my permaculture that way. Luckily, so far I don't have to, because I have plenty of space still to occupy in my own food forest or forest garden. But hey guys, let's transition to this whole digital permaculture sort of conversation thing. I know you both have separate projects that you're working on, but maybe we could talk about just like what it's meant to you, or how you would go about being a designer for other people. Both of you have kind of mentioned that, like that's one of the first things you did to maybe make a little bit of money. Mike, I don't know if I've heard that story for you, of like doing designs for other people. Have you been doing that long? Do you like that work? Would you encourage, new to permaculture folks to go that route? What do you think?
I did. I've maybe about a dozen professional designs.
Okay.
I worked at the same place with Cormac, and probably designs for about 1.5 years. And this was, learning curve, everything, fresh out of my PDC. And I think that if like the design, like it started heading toward my particular brain, which, I have a degree in physics, so I get like really nerdy sometimes. And so I started heading with like Gilda, and I started like programming things and into the design, and like kind of approach it from that perspective, which is just one part of design. Design's complicated. Design is really important in permaculture. I think if you're artistic, that's a good reason for you to be designing, but you also have to be organized, because you have to make a plant list, you have to make the right decisions, you have to put the right zones in there, so you have to be organized about how you do it. So yeah. I don't think there is any escaping touching the digital part at all. Most people are familiar with it now. But there's also in the permaculture community, which is diverse, there's a spectrum, like autism, in the permaculture community, where, some people are wary of the more digital stuff and the AI and everything. Totally understandable. We all should be wary of AI, but anyway. But there's that, maybe I'm mentioning the elephant in the room a little too early, but there's that, how much are we creatively being human in the design, artistic and creative, and how much are these powerful digital tools, how much are they helping us, and where's that line where they're not hurting us and they're not, and they're helping us. I think that's how I think of like where we're at now, or at least where I'm at. So I would say yes, to answer your question finally. I would say yes. If you love permaculture and planting things and having other people plant things and counting that on your, I planted those trees, I would design. If you're artistic, I would design. If you are organized and you just like a complicated process, I would design. If you can do all that plus do it quickly, like Cormac figured out, he inspired me. He was pumping out design. My designs took too long. I made it too complicated. I'll just be honest. Yeah. So that was my problem, and why I sort of moved away from design, because I wasn't really ready to do it in a lucrative way, because it just took too long. I was into it. I made beautiful designs. I cared about them. I had good relations with my clients, but I didn't have that ability to organize and to make it economic. So if you could do all those things, or at least 2 out of those 4 things, yes, I would design. And it could be lucrative for you if you find, if designs are coming in, if you work for a company or you're just good at sales. So yes, I would say yes.
I think that's a great answer. And I'll just add to that if you're listening and part of your, it's like Cormac said, it's like, you got to know yourself. Like, what are your interests? What are your particular dynamics? Do you have a family? Do you need to stay at home? Would you rather work from home? Well, then design might be a digital design service might be a really sensible career path if you're like, I want to work from home and be in my forest garden and be with my family and all that other stuff. So Cormac, Mike kind of alluded to, you got kind of quick at it. So maybe you can talk us through like, how's digital permaculture design been for you? Do you like it? And then how'd you get quick at it?
Well, I suppose it started for me is when I first started out, it was like I had to produce a digital drawing. So I drew my own place to learn the tools. So I used Garden Planner and then Affinity Designer at the time and just practiced. So then I was, at the time as well, I was shadowing other designers and seeing how their process worked. So for me, I like it because so I'm an engineer by background.
Oh, okay.
And I also have a master's in computer science. So to me, the design process, the digital learning was easy enough for me. So I was able to, and I liked it because of you're putting stuff together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. So I do enjoy that process. And then learning the client communication side, talking with people, extracting that right information out from them. And then it's the creative side comes into at the end where you're actually finding solutions for their problems. And then it's just how do you package that in a very professional way. So it was through the digital designs. If it looks nice, if it's pleasing to the eye, well, it's an easier, not sale, but it's a better product.
Yep.
That you're providing, better service. It's easier to understand. So that's how I got started. How I got efficient was just systems and processes. Just experimenting with things. So like before I even had the first call, sometimes I had the base map done, some of the research done. So when I'm sitting down with the person, basically, so I would have researched their growing zone, their environment, had a basic plant list done before I even spoke to them. So as I was talking to them, I was actually designing, and then I would go back and tidy that up. I think the fastest design I turned around was in 10 days. So that was from,
and this is like and that's a full like master plan, right? That has like not just the base map, not just the zones and the sectors, but the entire plant list, where you're going to plant it, how many plants, all that. Yep.
And a narrative explaining each element of the design, how the elements piece together. So it wasn't just here you go. It was like, here's why this went with this. So, for example, the chicken beside the garden. So I would take them on a journey through the garden. I say, you get up in the morning, you go get your eggs, and on the way back, you pick your herbs, you pick your chives, and then you have an omelet. So that would all be explained. So the space is explained, and then any sitting areas are definitely designing people on it. It has to be a usable space.
Yeah. And
then just getting that process. And it was really part of our PDCD Pro course that we're selling has that designer's kit, has them questionnaires for the client and them processes in it. So just to get you really to tune them in. It's a good starting point, but then you have to, again, use your own personality to take it and adjust it. Right. So it's just systems and processes and just doing things, getting organized.
Yep. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you wrote your own standard operating procedures to a degree then? Like, okay, I'm going to always do this, and that in that order every time?
Yep. Well, we would have had certain SOPs, but I would just done my own and just worked my own, worked through my own. Google Sheets is your friend. It's free.
Yeah, no doubt.
You just make a copy of your process for each new client and you just work through it. Just tick the boxes off and just go through it. I got like a checklist. Having a community helps as well. Having a couple of designers that you can bounce things off, people that you can talk to. Just think, what do you think of this? Or I'm having trouble finding a plant for this certain area. Does anybody have any ideas? And that helps a lot too.
And Cormac, what's your course called?
It's PDCD Professional. So it's basically taking you from basically the journey that we went through, from getting your PDC to becoming learning digital design, putting your website up, and using Gilda to create plant lists.
Okay, so you guys are sharing then your digital sort of like offerings here. Mike created Gilda. Maybe you want to describe that real quick so we don't get too lost for our guests who are listening. What is Gilda? What's its sort of unique function? And then let's talk about how Cormac has incorporated that into his course.
Okay, Gilda right now is it's a spreadsheet. It's on Google's spreadsheet, but it's complicated enough. It has over 2,000 plants in it, permaculture plants, with all the data. So Gilda You can design. I use Gilda in my designs for professional designs. And what Gilda does basically is it's already, you don't have to really search for anything. So you don't have to go online and get advertisement and all that stuff and all these websites. It's already there because I've already done all those searches. So it kind of keeps you in an environment of a more private environment, because Google Sheets is very, there's no ads, there's nothing to distract you. So it's nice. So it'll think about, if you choose something, here are the pollinators for it. So you can choose your pollinators with that, and then it'll gild trees for food forests. It goes on based on plant functions. I usually did 6 as a minimum for each design, like something called DigNat, dynamic accumulator, an insectary plant, a ground cover, a nitrogen fixer, aromatic plant, and then a pollinator. So bring in butterflies, etc. So I figured at least if you had, each tree had at least those minimum 6 core plant functions. So Gilda thinks in terms of plant functions instead of just like plants. So it'll pick plants based on the functions. And then it's going to see, it's in a spreadsheet, which is not, I love that environment, but nobody else does anymore. I'm a dinosaur. So I need to, I'm building a website also, but I also planted 500 blueberries, which has just taken me over. So I'm not doing, so Gilda's kind of frozen right now. The spreadsheet works. It's okay. It's good. It's just maybe not the best environment.
People can access it, or would we? Yes. Is it a purchasable thing, or it's free to the public at this point?
It's through through Vine, through right there. Members would have access to it through that right now. So it's in a sort of a hibernating though functioning state.
Yes, no, that's great. That sounds like an amazing resource. And tell me about the Vine membership. How does that work? How would people, if they're like, "Oh, I wanna access Gilda," what would be the sort of lowest entry barrier for them to?
So at the minute, it's only on the course.
Okay. So can you share your screen, Cormac? This is where it's like, oh man, does this work?
Mike's the Gilda expert.
If you want to see,
you can pull up your course maybe, and then we can kind of see on the inside a little bit. Like, obviously, don't give anything away that you don't want to, but it'd be kind of cool for folks to see what's being offered there.
Yeah, so we're running a beta version with only 10 students.
Okay.
So just to sort of basically test the waters and see, is there demand for this course?
Yep.
So we're just starting off with the bare basics, the bare bones. Now it's a lifetime membership, so any further upgrades you'll get access to.
Cool.
So as we intend to keep building this course as we go and as we learn and as we can sort of build it out. Once we sort of proof of concept, right, there's a demand for this. Let's get through it, get the feedback, and then launch again in September. They hopefully coincide with the end of Jeff Lawton's online PDC. They sort of give that there to be sort of be ready when them graduates come out.
Yeah, that's smart. So are you going through this? Will you be going through this kind of live a little bit, Cormac? Like you'll be kind of going through it with a cohort, that first 10 people?
So what we're going to do is it'll all be pre-recorded, but every week we'll have officers. So you get the recordings on a Monday, and then by the end of the week, then we'll have officers. You can ask any questions if you're having any problems. And then you have time to work on that then before the next week, before the next week's released. So it's basically Ian's our former head of design. He's given us a good testimonial there.
That's great. Also, grow your grass off is hilarious.
Yeah,
that's very clever.
Yeah, they have a podcast as well, but I think they've paused at the meantime. So basically, we're all experienced designers. We've over 80 digital designs. There's a certification at the end of it. Now that's just our certification. We hope to go to the likes of like Food Forest Abundance or Permaculture Canada and say, here is somebody's going through our course. Take this and you get a job with it, because you're not might get a job, but you prove that you're up to a certain level.
Yeah.
So here's the modules. So first is just the welcome. About the course, the designer's kit was is Crystal Hires. So that's her processes, her communication templates, checklists, resource guides. So she's done that. that she sells that separately as well on our site, but we've bundled it on here as well. So you get Mike's Gilda subscription for a year, which is $50 equivalent. The designer's kit was like $65, and then the rest then is just to sort of cover costs. So it's basically taking it from your basic introduction. Like, we're not teaching you here beautiful designs. You have to sort of figure that out. Although we hope to teach it in the future. It's just getting you started. So how do you go to Google Earth, extract the image, scale it properly on your drawing, which a lot of people find difficult. So we have 2 videos on there, one in meters and one in feet, to cover the both there. So scaling that's, and then just building a systematic approach to building your design, and you're using your layers on Affinity. So it's using your layers, like, and then building that template that you use for every design. So you're going to have like your water, your access, your structures, and then you can start adding your own layers in, like, I don't know, fences, ponds. So you can start, you can end up with like 50 layers, 60 layers just on your own template. But we're going to teach you how to do that. And then how do you, what do you call it? Frame it right to make it look nice. You can't have things floating on the page. And then how do you, so at the end of it, you'll be able to produce a professional digital drawing, which you can submit to us. We'll assess and give it back to you, just like we would a professional drawing. Great. And then it's the technology stack. How do you take that drawing and put it on your portfolio to advertise your services? Building a simple WordPress website, putting your portfolio on there, and then Gilda, I say there, a final assessment. And then the bonus modules just full of resources that we've built up over the years. Things like Jason Thomas's course, which is running on PCX at the minute, just pointing people in the right direction to say, look, there's all these things out there that you might find of interest.
Cool. Yeah, that's really great. That's exactly, I mean, as we all know, I mean, at least in my PDC, it wasn't taught to us exactly how to make a design. We did it by hand, and we did some overlays with just some like overlay, paper. And that's great. But the digital piece was we were all kind of left head scratching at the end of it. Well, how do I make this look, beautiful like I see in these books and things like that? So this is a great sort of offering for that. Can we see some of what the design looks like in Infinity 2 or Affinity? I should.
Yeah, I'll just load one up here.
And then, Mike, I'd love to see the spreadsheet if you're comfortable sharing that, and maybe you can just show us how you use it and how it functions for you and how it might for others. That'd be great. So this is Gilda. Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, so I just use it to design the blueberry and the hascaps.
Okay.
But you could use it so if you would start up here. Let's say we want to make let's say we want to gild one tree.
Yeah.
Okay. So we pick a fruit tree. What kind of fruit tree you like?
I've got some Asian pears growing right now that I'm building a gild around. So let's do that.
Asian. I'm just gonna let's see for pear.
Oh yeah, pear's fine.
All right, here we go. So I picked pears,